The order came sharp and cold. "Please step out of the vehicle." That was the moment his life was supposed to end. A lonely highway. A corrupt cop with a quota to fill. A black man. In a nice car. It is a story we have heard 1,000 times, and it usually ends in tragedy. But Officer Declan Voss made one fatal mistake that night. He never checked the driver's credentials. He had no idea that the man he was framing for a felony was not simply a victim. He was a hunter, and the drug money in the trunk was federal property. Get ready, because you are about to watch a predator become the prey in one of the most satisfying court cases in history. The heat on Interstate 10 outside Beaumont, Texas, was enough to make the asphalt shimmer like a mirage. The air felt heavy and suffocating in the lungs. Darius Hale adjusted the rearview mirror of his Dodge Charger. He was not speeding. He held the car at exactly 65 in a 65 zone. Cruise control locked. He was exhausted, eyes gritty from a long stakeout in Houston involving a cartel money laundering front. Yet his posture remained relaxed. He was a man who knew the law better than most of the people who enforced it, because he was the one who stepped in when local officers failed. Darius was a senior special agent with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. Tonight, wearing a plain t-shirt and basketball shorts, driving a personal vehicle back toward headquarters in New Orleans, he looked like just another guy on the road. To some people, he looked like a target. Blue and red lights exploded in his rearview mirror. Darius did not flinch. He only sighed the heavy sigh of a man who simply wanted to go home and sleep. He tapped the brakes, signaled, and pulled onto the gravel shoulder. He killed the engine, rolled down all 4 windows, a habit drilled into him by training to put officers at ease, and placed his large hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. In the side mirror, he watched the officer approach. The man was big, walking with the swagger of someone who believed he owned the concrete beneath his boots. His hand rested heavily on his holster. The name tag read, Voss. "License and registration," Voss barked before he even reached the window. No greeting. No, "Good evening." No, "Do you know why I stopped you?" "Good evening, officer," Darius said, his voice calm, baritone, and steady. "Is there a problem?" "I asked for your license and registration. Do not make me ask you again." Voss shone his flashlight directly into Darius's eyes, blinding him for a moment. Darius moved slowly. "I am reaching for my wallet in the center console." "Just get it," Voss snapped. Darius handed over his civilian driver's license and insurance. Voss snatched them, glanced at the ID, then back at Darius. He scanned the interior of the car. Clean. Empty except for a duffel bag on the back seat. "Where are you coming from, Mr. Hale?" Voss asked, putting a sarcastic emphasis on the Mr. "Houston. And where are you going?" "Home to New Orleans." Voss smirked. "Long drive. You got any weapons in the car? Drugs? Large amounts of currency?" "I have no illegal items in the vehicle," Darius answered carefully. He did not mention the service weapon locked in the biometric safe under the seat. He was legally allowed to carry it anywhere in the 50 states, but he knew how this game was played. Mention a gun now, and Voss would escalate. Darius needed to see how far this officer was willing to go. "Step out of the car." "Am I under arrest, Officer Voss?" "I smell marijuana," Voss lied. It was a practiced lie, smooth, delivered without a stutter. "That gives me probable cause. Step out of the vehicle or I will remove you." Darius knew there was no smell. He had never smoked a day in his life, and the car was a rental swap from the Bureau pool, detailed only the day before. This was it. The shakedown. He unlocked the door and stepped out. At 6'3", he stood an inch taller than Voss and was built like a linebacker. Voss took a half step back, his hand tightening on his grip. "Turn around, hands on the hood." As Darius complied, a second cruiser pulled up. A rookie hopped out. Officer Trent Quinn. He looked nervous, glancing between Voss and the passing traffic. "Watch him," Voss told Quinn. "I'm going to search the vehicle." "Officer," Darius said, staring at the hood of his car. "I do not consent to a search." "I don't care," Voss called from inside the car. "I have probable cause." Darius watched the reflection in the window. He saw Voss tearing through the glove box. Then he saw Voss reach into his own vest pocket. It was a subtle movement, a sleight of hand that would have fooled a civilian. But Darius was trained to spot micro-movements. Voss pulled a small plastic baggie from his vest and dropped it under the passenger seat. The fury that rose in Darius's chest was cold and sharp. This was not just a bad stop. This was a felony frame-up. "Bingo!" Voss shouted. He emerged holding the baggie. "Looks like we got a little bag of ice here. Methamphetamine, Mr. Hale. That's a felony." Voss walked over, grabbed Darius's wrist, and twisted it violently behind his back. The handcuffs clicked tight, too tight. "You're making a mistake," Darius said softly. "You really want to check my wallet again. Look at the second slot." "I don't care what's in your wallet, junkie," Voss spat. He shoved Darius toward the cruiser. "You're going away for a long time. Quinn, tow the car. We're seizing it." As Voss shoved Darius into the cramped back seat, Darius caught Quinn's eye. The rookie looked pale. He had seen the vest move too. He knew, but he said nothing. Darius sat in the back of the cruiser, the hard plastic digging into his spine. He closed his eyes. He could have screamed. He could have shouted that he was a federal agent. He could have demanded a supervisor. But if he did, Voss might receive nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Internal affairs might bury it. No, Darius thought. If I reveal myself now, he gets fired. If I wait, he goes to prison. He stayed silent. The trap was set. But this time, the mouse was the one with the teeth. The holding cell at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department smelled of stale urine, bleach, and despair. Darius sat on the concrete bench, his jacket folded neatly beside him. Voss had allowed him to keep it after booking, a small mercy granted only because they had not yet processed his personal effects thoroughly. They had taken his phone, his wallet, and his belt. They had not found the badge. Darius had taken a calculated risk. When Quinn patted him down at the station, Darius maneuvered his body so the hidden pocket in the lining of his jacket, where his credentials rested, pressed against the wall. Quinn, lazy and rushing, missed it. They threw his wallet into a bag without checking the second slot. So Darius sat in the cell with his badge literally on his person, hidden inside the jacket beside him, a loaded gun of evidence waiting to go off. A guard eventually banged on the bars. Darius stood slowly and was led into a small interrogation room. Inside sat a woman who looked as though she had not slept in a week. She was shuffling through a stack of files that seemed ready to topple over. "I'm Belle Harper," she said without looking up. "Public defender. I've got your case. Possession of a controlled substance, resisting arrest, obstruction of justice. They're throwing the book at you, Mr. Hale." Darius sat down. "I didn't resist, and I didn't obstruct. The police report says you refused to exit the vehicle and acted aggressively," Harper said, finally looking at him. She paused. Darius did not look like her usual clients. He sat with a stillness that was almost unnerving. "The police report is a work of fiction, Miss Harper," she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Look, here's the reality. Officer Voss is the arresting officer. He's a 20-year veteran. You're you. It's his word against yours. The prosecutor, Mr. Holt, is looking to make examples this election year. If you go to trial, you're looking at 10 to 15 years, mandatory minimum, because of the weight of the meth." Darius's face remained impassive. "And the offer? Plead guilty to simple possession. 2 years probation. Time served. It was a trap. A guilty plea would destroy his career. It would end his life as an agent. It would validate Voss's corruption. No, Darius said. Harper blinked. Excuse me? I'm not pleading guilty to a crime I didn't commit. I want a trial. Harper laughed, a dry, humorless sound. A trial? Do you have money for a private attorney? Because I have a caseload of 300 people. I cannot give this the attention a trial needs. You will lose. I won't lose, Darius said. I want you to file a motion for the dash cam footage and the body cam footage from Officer Voss and Officer Quinn. I want the GPS data from their cruisers, and I want the dispatch logs. Harper stared at him. They'll say the cameras malfunctioned. They always do with Voss. File the motions, Miss Harper. Make them say it on the record. She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head and closed the file. Okay, it's your funeral. Arraignment is coming up. We plead not guilty. But I'm telling you, Judge Harlan Crow and Voss go way back. You are walking into a slaughter. I know, Darius said. I'm counting on it. The arraignment was a blur. Judge Harlan Crow was a red-faced man who barely looked over his spectacles. He set bail at $50,000, clearly designed to keep Darius locked up. But Darius had his one phone call. He did not call a bail bondsman. He did not call his family. He dialed a number in Washington, D.C. Operations. A crisp voice answered. This is Agent Hale. Badge number 492 Alpha. Authorization code Delta X Ray 9. There was a pause, and the tone of the operator changed instantly. Agent Hale, we've been trying to ping your location. Your transponder went dark. I'm in Jefferson County Jail. I've been arrested by a local PD. I'm deep cover now. Unauthorized. Do not, I repeat, do not contact the local precinct. Do not pull me out. Sir, if you are in custody, protocol dictates we intervene. Negative. I have a corrupt officer dead to rights, but I need him to lie under oath. If you pull me out now, it's an administrative error. If he testifies, it's perjury and federal civil rights violations. I need a ghost team to secure the courthouse footage and the exterior surveillance of the arrest scene before they wipe it. Can you authorize? A longer pause. Then Assistant Director Silas Reed came on the line. Hale. The director's voice boomed. You're playing with fire. You're in a Texas jail. If they put you in general population, you could be killed. I can handle myself, sir. I need you to wire the bail money through a shell company. Get me out, but keep my identity sealed. I want to walk into that courtroom as Darius Hale, unemployed civilian. I want to see them lie to my face. You're a crazy son of a... Fine, the money will be there. Get the evidence. Bring them down. Darius hung up the phone. He walked back to his cell, with a small smile playing on his lips. Voss thought he had caught a rat. He had no idea he had just locked himself in a cage with a lion. The Jefferson County Courthouse was a monument to old money Texas, all mahogany wood, marble floors, and the smell of floor wax masking the scent of anxiety. Darius Hale walked into courtroom 4B wearing a charcoal suit he had retrieved from his apartment in New Orleans. He looked impeccable, sharp, and utterly out of place among the usual parade of petty criminals in orange jumpsuits. He sat beside Belle Harper at the defense table. Harper looked nervous. She was tapping her pen against a legal pad already covered in frantic scribbles. Holt is going for the throat, she whispered, leaning in. He just filed a motion to include your lack of employment history as evidence of a criminal lifestyle. He wants to paint you as a career criminal. Darius nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the empty witness stand. Let him. The higher they build the lie, the harder it falls. All rise, the bailiff bellowed. Judge Harlan Crow swept in, his black robes billowing. He looked bored before he even sat down. He glanced at the docket, then at Darius, his eyes narrowing slightly. Case number 44-902, State of Texas versus Darius Hale. Are we ready to proceed? The state is ready, Your Honor, Prosecutor Adrian Holt announced. Holt was a man who wore expensive suits that never quite fit, and he had a smile that looked as though it had been carved with a knife. He was running for district attorney, and a conviction on an interstate drug trafficker would look excellent on a campaign flyer. "The defense is ready," Harper said, her voice wavering slightly. "Opening statements," Crow grunted. Holt strode to the center of the room. He did not look at the jury. He looked at the audience, performing. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Holt began, his voice booming. "This case is simple. It is about law and order. It is about the brave men and women who patrol our highways at night, keeping our communities safe from the poison that flows in from the cities. The defendant, Mr. Hale, was stopped on Interstate 10. He was found with a significant amount of methamphetamine. He resisted a lawful order. He disrespected the badge. The evidence will show that Officer Voss, a decorated veteran of the force, followed protocol, identified a threat, and neutralized it. Don't let the defendant's suit fool you. A wolf in sheep's clothing is still a wolf." He pointed a finger at Darius. Darius did not blink. He simply took a note on his pad. "Wolf. Remember that." Harper's opening was brief, highlighting the lack of physical evidence beyond the officer's word. But the jury looked skeptical. In this county, a cop's word was gospel. "The state calls Officer Declan Voss to the stand," Holt announced. Voss walked in through the side doors. He was in his dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. He looked like the picture of American heroism. He took the oath, his hand steady on the Bible. "Officer Voss," Holt said, leaning against the jury box, "walk us through the night of the arrest." Voss cleared his throat. "I was on routine patrol on I-10. I observed a black Dodge Charger moving erratically. It was drifting across the lane lines." Lie number 1. Darius thought. Keep assist was on. "I initiated a traffic stop," Voss continued. "The driver, the defendant, took a long time to pull over. When I approached the vehicle, I immediately detected the strong odor of burnt marijuana coming from the cabin." "And did you find marijuana in the car?" Holt asked. "No, sir. Which usually means the suspect consumed it or discarded it prior to the stop. But the smell gave me probable cause to search." "And how did the defendant react when you asked him to step out?" Voss sighed, looking down at his hands as if reliving a trauma. "He became belligerent. He refused to comply. He was reaching around the vehicle. I feared for my safety and the safety of Officer Quinn. I had to forcibly remove him from the vehicle for my own protection." The jury gasped softly. An older lady in the front row shook her head at Darius in disgust. "And upon searching the vehicle, what did you find?" "Under the passenger seat, hidden in a magnetic box, I found a bag containing 40 grams of crystal methamphetamine." Holt walked to the evidence table and held up the baggie. "Is this the bag, officer?" "Yes, sir, that's it." "Officer Voss, did your dash cam capture this arrest?" This was the moment. Darius leaned forward. Voss looked at the judge, then the jury, with a practiced look of regret. "Unfortunately, no. The system in Unit 4 Alpha has been glitchy for months. It failed to record the stop. And my body camera, in the struggle with the defendant, the battery pack was dislodged. It cut out right before I found the drugs." "So we only have your word?" Holt asked, playing devil's advocate to steal the defense's thunder. "My word," Voss said, squaring his jaw, "and 20 years of service to this county." "Thank you, officer. No further questions." The courtroom was silent. It was a masterclass in fabrication. Simple, unverifiable, and relying entirely on prejudice. Judge Crow looked at Harper. "Cross-examination." Harper stood. Her legs were shaking, but she remembered what Darius had told her during their prep sessions. Don't attack his anger. Attack his details. "Officer Voss," she began, "you said the car was drifting, yet the GPS data from your own cruiser shows you were following Mr. Hale for 4 miles before turning on your lights. If he was driving erratically, why wait 4 miles?" Voss did not miss a beat. "I was running his plates, checking for warrants. And you said you smelled marijuana. But the toxicology report from Mr. Hale, taken after the arrest, came back completely clean. Zero trace of THC. How do you explain that? Voss shrugged. Maybe someone else had been smoking in the car. Maybe the smell was on his clothes from a party. I know what I smelled. Let's talk about this body camera, Harper said, picking up a technical manual Darius had provided her. You said the battery pack was dislodged during the struggle, but this model, the Axon Body 3, has an internal locking mechanism for the battery. It requires a specialized tool to remove. Are you saying Mr. Hale had a specialized Axon removal tool in his hand while he was allegedly resisting arrest? Voss's eyes tightened, the first crack. I'm saying things happen in a fight, lady. Equipment breaks. Interesting, Harper said, because the log files from the camera, which we subpoenaed directly from the manufacturer, not the department, show that the camera wasn't dislodged. It shows the device was manually powered down by holding the button for 5 seconds, minutes after Mr. Hale was already in handcuffs. Objection! Holt stood up. Calls for speculation. Overruled, Judge Crow said. Surprisingly, he leaned forward, looking at Voss. I don't know about log files, Voss stammered, his face reddening. I just know it went off. One last question, Harper said. She walked to the defense table and picked up a piece of paper. You testified that you found the drugs under the passenger seat. But Officer Quinn, in his preliminary report, which was never filed, but which we recovered from the digital draft server, wrote, and I quote, Officer Voss retrieved the item from his own vest and placed it in the vehicle. How do you explain that discrepancy? The courtroom erupted. Holt was on his feet, shouting, Objection! Hearsay! Quinn isn't on the stand! Voss looked furious. He glared at Darius with pure, unadulterated hatred. Quinn is a rookie, he shouted over the noise. He doesn't know what he saw. He was scared. Order, Judge Crow banged his gavel. Order in this court. Darius sat perfectly still. The trap was sprung. Voss had just publicly discredited his partner to save himself. Now they were divided. The recess was a tense affair. Harper was hyperventilating in the hallway. Did you see his face? She gasped. Voss looked like he wanted to kill me. And the judge, Crow is furious. We dug up that draft report. How did you even get that? Darius adjusted his cufflinks. I told you, Belle, the digital footprint never disappears. When Quinn typed that report, it saved a cached copy to the server before Voss made him delete it. My associates managed to locate the backup. Your associates? Harper whispered. Who are you, Darius, really? Because unemployed people don't have forensic data teams. Focus, Belle. We wounded him, but we haven't killed the beast yet. Holt is going to try to rehabilitate Voss's image. Then he's going to come after me. When he calls me to the stand, you want to testify? It's suicide, Darius. Holt will tear apart your past. He'll make you look like a drifter. That is exactly what I want him to do. Back in the courtroom, the atmosphere had shifted. The air was electric. The jury was whispering. Voss was sitting in the back row now, arms crossed, staring daggers at the back of Darius's head. The prosecution rested its case after a shaky redirect, in which Holt tried to paint Quinn as incompetent. The defense calls Darius Hale, Harper announced. A ripple of shock went through the gallery. Defendants rarely testified. It opened them up to everything. Darius walked to the stand. He moved with a grace that commanded attention. He took the oath, his voice deep and resonating in the quiet room. I do. Harper led him through the basics. He denied the drugs. He denied the resistance. He told the story exactly as it happened. The polite compliance, the sudden aggression from Voss. Then it was Holt's turn. Holt stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked like a shark smelling blood. Mr. Hale, Holt began, walking close to the stand. Let's talk about you. You claim you're an innocent traveler, But you have no address in Texas. You have no address in Louisiana that we could verify as a permanent residence. You drive a $60,000 car. You wear $1,000 suits. Yet according to IRS records, you haven't filed a tax return in 3 years under the name Darius Hale as a private employee. How do you explain that? Darius leaned back. My employment is specialized. My taxes are handled through a different channel. Holt laughed. A different channel? Is that what drug dealers call it now? Laundering? Objection! Harper cried. Withdrawn. Holt smirked. Mr. Hale, isn't it true that you fit the profile of a courier? High mileage driving, cash usage, no fixed job. Traveling specifically along the I-10 corridor, a known drug route. I travel where the work takes me, Darius said calmly. And what work is that? Holt pressed. Are you a consultant? A salesman? I solve problems. You solve problems? Holt mocked. Well, you have a big problem right now, Mr. Hale. You see, we found traces of your DNA on the baggie. The courtroom went silent. This was a bluff. Darius knew it immediately. If they had DNA, they would have opened with it. Holt was lying to rattle him. Ooze. That is impossible, Darius said. Is it? Or did you just forget to wear gloves when you were packing your product? Holt leaned in, his face inches from Darius's. Tell the jury the truth. You're a ghost. You have no history. You have no life. You're just a criminal who got caught by a good cop. And now you're trying to ruin his career to save your own skin. Darius looked at Holt. Then he looked at Voss in the back of the room. He saw the smirk returning to Voss's face. They thought they had him. They thought he was a nobody who could be bullied into a corner. Darius turned to the judge. Your Honor, he said, his voice cutting through the tension. The prosecutor has made repeated inquiries into my employment and my identity. He claims I am a ghost. He claims I have no authority and no standing. To answer his question fully, and to prove that Officer Voss's narrative is not only false, but a federal crime, I request permission to introduce one final piece of evidence. It is in my possession right now. Judge Crow frowned. Evidence? You can't just pull evidence out of your pocket, Mr. Hale. Discovery is closed. This is rebuttal evidence, Your Honor, Darius said calmly, directly refuting the prosecutor's claim that I am a criminal with no legitimate employment. It was on my person at the time of the arrest. Officer Voss missed it because he was too busy planting drugs. Officer Quinn missed it because he was negligent. But it has been in the lining of my jacket. This jacket, the entire time. Holt rolled his eyes. Your Honor, this is a stunt. He probably has a fake business card or a letter from his mother. Judge Crow sighed. I'll allow it, but make it quick. What is it? Darius reached into the inner breast pocket of his charcoal suit. He felt the familiar weight of the leather wallet. He pulled it out. The room was silent. Darius flipped the wallet open. The gold badge caught the overhead lights, flashing brilliantly. The bold blue letters were visible even to the jury. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent. Darius held it up for the jury, then turned it toward Voss. My name is Senior Special Agent Darius Hale, Public Corruption Unit, Darius said, his voice dropping an octave, turning into the voice of doom. And I am not the defendant in this room anymore. I am the investigation. Voss's face went white, a sickly pale white. He slumped on his bench as if his strings had been cut. Holt froze, his mouth half open. Your Honor, Darius continued, standing up and taking control of the room. The ghost team the defense referred to earlier is a federal surveillance unit. We have audio of Officer Voss bragging about the plant in the locker room minutes after my booking. We have the deleted body cam footage recovered from the cloud. And we have Officer Quinn's confession, signed in the hallway outside. Darius looked at the bailiff. Secure the doors. Nobody leaves. The courtroom exploded into chaos. The silence that followed Darius's declaration did not last. It shattered like glass. "This is outrageous!" Prosecutor Holt screamed, his face flushing a deep, panicked crimson. "He's lying. That's a prop. Arrest him for impersonating a federal officer." Judge Crow was banging his gavel so hard, the wooden handle threatened to snap. "Order. I will have order in this court. Bailiff, take the defendant into custody." The bailiff, an older man named Carl, who had been watching the proceedings with growing suspicion, hesitated. He looked at the badge in Darius's hand. He looked at the terrified expression on Voss's face in the back row. He did not move toward Darius. "I wouldn't do that, Carl," Darius said calmly. He no longer looked like a defendant. He stood tall, radiating the authority of the federal government. "Under Title 18, Section 242 of the United States Code, deprivation of rights under color of law, this courtroom is now a crime scene." Before Holt could shout another objection, the double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a heavy, ominous thud. 6 men and women in tactical vests emblazoned with FBI marched in. They moved with a precision that made the local deputies look like mall cops. At the lead was Assistant Director Silas Reed. "Secure the room," Reed barked. 2 agents moved to the exits. 2 moved to the jury box to ensure their safety. Reed walked straight up the center aisle, stepping over the gate. He nodded to Darius. "Agent Hale." "Status." "The trap is sprung, sir," Darius replied, holstering his badge. "We have perjury, fabrication of evidence, and conspiracy to commit a felony on the record." Voss scrambled out of his seat. "I didn't know! He didn't tell me who he was! This is entrapment!" Darius walked out of the witness box, crossing the floor to stand directly in front of Voss. The barrier between them, criminal and cop, had dissolved. Now it was just the hunter and the prey. "Entrapment," Darius said, his voice low and dangerous, "is when I trick you into committing a crime you wouldn't otherwise commit. I didn't trick you into planting drugs, Voss. I didn't trick you into lying on that stand. I just gave you the opportunity to show the world who you really are." Voss looked around wildly. "Judge, do something!" Judge Crow looked pale. He was wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. "Director Reed, is it? This is a local court. You have no jurisdiction to interrupt a trial in session." "Actually, Your Honor," Reed said, handing a folded document to the clerk. "This is a federal warrant signed by a U.S. magistrate judge. It supersedes your authority. We aren't just here for Officer Voss." Reed turned to the agents. "Take him." 2 agents grabbed Voss. He struggled, instinct taking over. "Get off me! I'm a police officer!" "Not anymore," Darius said, as they slapped the handcuffs on Voss. Real steel cuffs, not the zip ties they used for mass arrests. Voss made eye contact with Darius. The arrogance was gone. In its place was the hollow, terrifying realization that his life was over. "And Mr. Holt!" Darius called out, as the agents began to escort Voss away. The prosecutor was shoving papers into his briefcase, trying to look invisible. He froze. "We'll need your files," Darius said. "All of them, specifically the ones regarding the Asset Forfeiture Fund. You and the sheriff split 50-50. We know about the kickbacks, Holt. We've been auditing the county's books for months." Holt dropped his briefcase. The clasp broke, spilling case files across the floor. Hundreds of lives he had ruined, now lying in a messy heap. "I was just doing my job," Holt whispered, his voice trembling. "You were doing a job," Darius corrected. "Just not the one you swore an oath to do." The jury sat stunned. The woman in the front row who had shaken her head at Darius earlier was now covering her mouth with her hand, eyes wide. Darius turned to his public defender. Belle Harper was still sitting at the table, staring at him as if he were an alien. "You knew?" she asked softly. About the team, the warrant? I couldn't tell you, Belle, Darius said gently. I needed your reaction to be real. Your outrage had to be genuine for the jury to feel it. You're a hell of a lawyer. You fought for me when you thought I was nobody. Thank you. Harper let out a breathless laugh, slumping back in her chair. I need a drink, or a vacation, or both. Take both, Darius smiled. The Bureau is picking up the tab. The arrest of Officer Declan Voss was only the first domino. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Department was turned upside down. The FBI raided the precinct, seizing servers, body cam logs, and the contents of the evidence lockers. Darius sat in a temporary command center, set up in a conference room at a local hotel. The walls were covered in flowcharts. Voss was at the bottom. Above him was the sergeant. Above him, the sheriff. And to the side, Judge Harlan Crow and Prosecutor Adrian Holt. It was a racket, a machine designed to pull over out-of-state drivers, plant evidence, or find minor infractions, seize their cash under civil forfeiture laws, and then pressure them into plea deals to avoid jail time. The money went into the department's discretionary fund, which paid for the sheriff's new boat, Holt's country club membership, and Voss's heavy gambling debts. They had picked Darius because his car was nice, and he was alone. They thought he would pay the $10,000 fine to make the felony go away. They had bet on the wrong horse. Darius walked into the interrogation room at the federal holding facility in Houston. Voss was sitting there, wearing an orange jumpsuit, the same shade of orange as the men he had mocked for years. Voss looked up. He looked smaller. The bluster was gone. He had not slept. You enjoyed it, didn't you? Voss spat, playing the victim. Darius sat down, placing a file on the table. I didn't enjoy it, Voss. I hated every second of it. I hated the smell of that cell. I hated the way you looked at me on the side of the road. You didn't see a man. You saw a payday. It's how the game is played, Voss muttered. Everybody does it. No, Darius said firmly. Criminals do it. Police officers prevent it. He opened the file. Here's the situation, Declan. We have Quinn. He rolled on you immediately. He told us about the magnet box in your vest. He told us about the 12 other stops this month. He told us about the time you planted a gun on that college kid from Florida. Voss flinched. That kid is still in prison, Darius said, his voice hardening. 3 years into a 10-year sentence. We're getting him out. But you're going to take his place. I can cut a deal, Voss said quickly, desperation creeping in. I can give you the sheriff. I can give you Crow. I know where the money is hid. Darius leaned back, crossing his arms. We already have the money, Declan. We tracked the wire transfers, and the sheriff turned himself in to avoid the death penalty on a separate racketeering charge. You have nothing to trade. Voss's eyes welled up. For the first time, the reality hit him. I have kids, Hale. Please. I'm a cop. I can't go to general population. They'll kill me. Darius stood up. He walked to the door, then paused. He looked back at the man who had tried to ruin his life for a quota. You should have thought about that when you put me in the cage, Voss. But don't worry. The Bureau isn't like you. We follow the rules. He tapped the door for the guard. We're putting you in protective custody, Darius said. Solitary confinement. 23 hours a day in a 6x8 cell. No human contact. It keeps you safe. Voss's face crumbled. Solitary was a fate worse than a beating. It was a slow death of the mind. For how long? Voss whispered. Darius checked his watch. The sentencing guidelines for kidnapping, perjury, deprivation of rights, and racketeering. I'd say about 25 years. As the door closed, Darius did not hear a plea. He heard a sob. He walked out of the facility into the bright Houston sunlight. He took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. He pulled out his phone and dialed Belle Harper. Hey, she answered. I'm at the airport. You weren't kidding about the vacation. Enjoy it, Darius said. When you get back, Check your office. I left a recommendation letter on your desk. The U.S. Attorney's office in Houston is looking for prosecutors who actually care about the truth. I think you'd be a good fit." There was a silence on the line. "Darius, thank you for everything." "Just doing my job, counselor." Darius hung up. He walked to his charger, which had been returned, cleaned, and swept for bugs. He threw his bag in the back. He had a long drive back to New Orleans, but this time he was not tired. He put the car in drive, checked his mirrors, and merged onto the highway. I-10 was just a road again. It was not a trap anymore, not while he was watching. The rot in Jefferson County did not stop at Officer Declan Voss. Voss was only a symptom. The disease went much deeper, and Darius Hale was not the kind of surgeon who stitched up a wound while leaving the infection inside. Darius walked back into the Jefferson County Courthouse. The air felt different now. The smell of fear that used to hang over the defendants had migrated. Now it was the court staff, the clerks, and the deputies who walked on eggshells. Darius was not there as a defendant this time. He was there as a witness for the prosecution against the man who had sat on the bench for 20 years, Judge Harlan Crow. The courtroom was packed, but the dynamic had flipped. The gallery was not filled with the families of petty criminals. It was filled with reporters from national news outlets. The story of the FBI agent's trap had gone viral, and the world wanted to see the finale. Judge Harlan Crow sat at the defense table. He looked small without his robes. He wore a cheap, ill-fitting gray suit. His face, once flushed with arrogant authority, was sallow and gray. Beside him sat a court-appointed attorney, a delicious irony that was not lost on anyone in the room. The new presiding judge was a woman named Judge Alana Moore, brought in from the federal district to ensure impartiality. She did not suffer fools. "Mr. Hale," Judge Moore said, nodding to Darius, "please proceed with your statement regarding the financial audits." Darius stood. He held a thick binder. "Thank you, Your Honor. During our seizure of the Sheriff's Department's assets, we uncovered a secondary ledger hidden in a safe deposit box registered to a shell company, Everett Consulting, LLC. This ledger detailed monthly transfers from the Civil Forfeiture Fund directly into accounts controlled by the defendant Harlan Crow and the former prosecutor Adrian Holt." Darius opened the binder, his voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "These were not administrative errors. This was a subscription service for freedom. If a defendant paid the bribe, disguised as legal fees to a firm owned by Holt's brother, Crow would dismiss the case. If they didn't pay, Crow would impose maximum sentencing. We have identified 114 cases where this pattern occurred." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. 114 lives sold for cash. Crow's lawyer tried to object, but it was weak. "Objection. Relevance." "The relevance," Darius said, locking eyes with the disgraced judge, "is that this court was not a house of law. It was an auction house, and the currency was human life. When the sentencing came, it was brutal." Judge Moore looked down at Crow. "You have disgraced the robe. You have turned the shield of the law into a sword to rob the vulnerable. There is no greater crime for a public servant." Crow stood up, shaking. I was pressured. The sheriff, he made me." "You are a judge," Moore snapped. "You are the one person who is supposed to be immune to pressure." She slammed the gavel. "Harlan Crow, I sentence you to 30 years in federal prison. You will serve your time in a medium-security facility, and I am recommending that you be placed in a wing with the general population so you can see exactly what kind of men you sent there." Crow collapsed into his chair, weeping into his hands. Prosecutor Adrian Holt, who had already taken a plea deal for 15 years in exchange for testifying against Crow, watched from the gallery, his head bowed in shame. The karma was complete. The trinity of corruption, the cop, the prosecutor, and the judge were all gone. But for Darius, the job was not finished until the balance was restored. Darius stood outside the county jail. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and black. The heavy steel doors buzzed and clanked open. A young man walked out. He was thin, pale, and blinked rapidly against the daylight. He held a plastic bag with his belongings. This was Quentin Vale, the college kid from Florida, whom Voss had framed years earlier. Quentin looked around, expecting his parents, but they were delayed. Instead, he saw a tall, broad-shouldered man leaning against a black Dodge Charger. Quentin hesitated. He had learned to fear men who looked like Darius. Darius pushed off the car and walked over, extending a hand. "Quentin." "Yeah." Quentin's voice was raspy from disuse. "I'm Darius Hale. I'm the one who read your file." Quentin stared at him. "You're the FBI guy, the one the guards were talking about." "That's me." Quentin looked down at his shoes. They said I'm exonerated, that it never happened." "That's right," Darius said. "Your record is clean. The government is issuing you a check for wrongful imprisonment. It won't give you the years back, Quentin. I know that. But it's a start." Quentin looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Why? Why did you do it? You didn't know me." Darius looked past Quentin at the grim fortress of the jail. "Because I was you, Quentin. That night on the highway. If I didn't have that badge, if I didn't have the training, I would be walking in there and you would still be rotting. It was a coin toss, and I don't like gambling with people's lives." Darius reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "This is my personal number. If you need anything, a job reference, help with school, someone to talk to, you call me. You're not alone anymore." Quentin took the card, gripping it like a lifeline. "Thank you. Just thank you." A car pulled up. Quentin's parents. There were screams of joy, hugging, crying. A family reunited because one man refused to be a victim. Darius watched them for a moment, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. He felt the weight in his chest, the anger he had carried since that night on I-10. Finally lift. He walked back to his Charger. His phone buzzed. It was Director Reed. "Hale," Reed said. "Good work in Texas. The governor is issuing a public commendation." "He can keep it," Darius said, getting into the car. "What's next?" "We have a situation in Chicago," Reed said, his tone shifting back to business. "A city councilman taking bribes to overlook building codes. A building collapsed. People are hurt." Darius started the engine. The 6.4-liter Hemi rumbled to life, a deep, aggressive growl. "Send me the file," Darius said. "You need a break, Hale. You've been under for months." "I'll rest when the bad guys do, sir." Darius put the car in gear. He glanced one last time at the courthouse in the rearview mirror. It was just a building now. The monsters were gone. He pulled onto the highway, merging into the traffic. He was just another car on the road, a black Charger, a man in a suit. But the corrupt, the greedy, and the cruel would do well to check their rearview mirrors. The wolf was hunting again, and that is how the hunter became the prey. Officer Declan Voss thought he was invincible, hiding behind a badge to prey on the innocent. He thought Darius Hale was just another statistic, another life he could ruin for a quick payday. But he forgot the golden rule of the street. You never know who you are dealing with. Voss is now serving a 25-year sentence in federal prison, spending 23 hours a day in a concrete box. The sheriff and the prosecutor were stripped of their power and indicted. But the real victory was not simply putting bad men behind bars. It was the freedom of the innocent. People like that college kid from Florida who were released because Darius Hale stood his ground. Justice is blind, but sometimes it needs a little help to see the truth. What would you have done if you were in Darius's shoes? Would you have revealed your identity right away? Or would you have waited to trap them the way he did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of massive karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. We have more tales of corruption, justice, and revenge coming your way. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.